Hey all, Siege here, and today I thought it was relevant to go over the Naberus story in Warframe and some of the potentially larger implications it appears to infer, some of which are impressively disturbing when you really think about it. Now, I'm sure most of you know this, but if for some reason you don't, this little story told by Grandmother on Deimos can be found by purchasing the Whispering Naberus mobile from the daughter vendor Kylie and simply activating it by being close to the decoration. By doing this, we are given the story via cutscene. For those that haven't seen it, I will show it in its entirety now, and for those that want to skip forward, go to the time shown on screen below. In a previous video, I'd mentioned how Kuva is capable of various forms of possession, and this story illustrates another example of that. It's also really messed up when you consider what's actually happening, so enjoy!
Would you like to hear a story for Naberus? One that I told my grandchildren when they were small. Very well. Long ago, in the Orokin days, a golden people lived in spoiled luxury. If a body wore out, why, they would take a new one as easily as plucking a maprico. Such was the mystery of the Kuva. So, what became of death and disease? Oh, they were abundant, but not for the Orokin. They were above petty death. Such was their contempt that they decreed a special day on which to make fun of it. On Naberus, the night of memory, the shining people laughed at death. They dressed in costumes that recalled the old days of mortality. Skulls grinned, hallways guttered with demon lights. For one night, beauty was banished, rot and monstrosity held sway. Now, on one very special Naberus, 3 pretty Orokin were bored, as Orokin so often were. Naberus no longer holds its magic for me, sighed one. Masks and costumes are for children, grumbled another. Why follow the crowd, mused the third. Are we not the very elite of the elite? Ha ha! Up, my Kissingtons, my luscious loves. Send for blue Kuva and hot lights. I have a sport that will mend all. And in the corridor, behind a curtain, a solitary silent girl heard them and said nothing. Then the 3 were very wicked. For what do you think they did? Down into the streets they went, and they caught 3 poor Austrians and bore them back to their gilded halls. One they peeled like a fruit and decked out with glassy splinters, and his naked jaws went chitter-chatter-snap. And it echoed all around. Scarlet footprints he left. Another's limbs they twisted and wrenched his neck, and made a bundle of him until he scuttled upsy-downsy like a horrid crab, with his sockets all empty and his stretched-out nose snuffling. The third they pulled thin in hand and foot. She walked spindly-wise on long tiptoes like a spider, and her entrails hung delicately down. She whispered, split-tongued and hissing as she went. Fine costumes we've made, chortled the 3 Orokin. Let us now try them on and visit our friends. What shrieking there will be! Oh, our names will live forever in the court for such a prank as this. Now, the silent girl brought them their blue Kuva. so they could take on these twisted bodies for only a short time before returning to their own. They drank and slept and woke in their 3 horrid forms. Off they went down the stairs, out the door, into the city, into the night of banners and masks and wild hilarity. Chitter-chatter-snap, scuttle-buttle, whispery-hispery. As you can imagine, there were many screams and laughs. Such cleverness, such wit. But in a high room of the tower, the silent girl looked at the faces of the 3 sleeping Orokin. She went and opened a little ivory door that she was not supposed to know about, and drew forth a flask that she would have been glassed for even looking at. A flask of crimson Kuva, the scarlet seal upon continuity, permanent. And she tipped it down 3 cruel throats. With a little laugh, she went skating away, never to return. There were many screams that Naberus night, but when the sun came up, none screamed so loud as the 3 who found that they were trapped in the hideous bodies they themselves had fashioned forever and ever. So, listen carefully, Tenno, and beware, for you may hear them coming tonight. Whispery-hispery on long stalking bones, scuttle-buttle with his eyes all empty, and skinless, dripping-handed, chitter-chatter-snap. Happy Naberus!
So if you didn't think the Orokin were dysfunctional enough, you probably have a much better idea of it now. On a related note, I find it rather shocking but also telling of what the people of that society had truly become. Monsters in their own right, in that, according to Kylie at least, this whole Naberus celebration, the happiest time of year according to her, is all about death, darkness, and deviance. What interesting concepts to celebrate, especially if they are to be in fact considered as a trio, not just each individually. Many will associate Halloween as a parallel to this event, but Halloween as we know it has its roots in the Celtic festival of Samhain, a pre-Christian festival traditionally held on October 31st. The Celts, who occupied what is now Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France roughly 2,000 years ago, believed that the dead returned to Earth on Samhain. The evening before was known as All Hallows' Eve and later Halloween. During the event, the villagers would disguise themselves in costumes made of animal skins to drive away phantom visitors. Banquet tables were prepared and food was left out to placate unwelcome spirits. In later centuries, people began dressing as ghosts, demons, and other malevolent creatures, performing antics in exchange for food and drink. This custom, known as mumming, dates all the way back to the Middle Ages and may be the original inspiration of modern-day trick-or-treating, although it's also possible the practice may have been derived from the process of souling, where less fortunate individuals would visit the houses of wealthier families and receive pastries called soul cakes, in exchange for a promise to pray for the souls of the homeowner's dead relatives, which was later taken up by children, who would go from door to door asking for gifts such as food, money, and ale. Finally, in Scotland around the same time, young people took part in a tradition called guising, dressing up in costume and accepting offerings from various households. Rather than pledging to pray for the dead, they would sing a song, recite a poem, tell a joke, or perform another sort of trick before collecting their treat, which typically consisted of fruit, nuts, or coins. In truth, the practice today is probably taken in part from all these older traditions. We can see influences that shape the practice as it is today, and I think it's pretty obvious that Halloween, at its core at least, was more about warding off potential evil spirits and later the assistance of underprivileged persons. Really nothing like what we are told the Orokin celebrate Naberus for. And this story in particular is especially horrific, with the Orokin of note deciding to accost 3 innocent Ostrons, take their bodies outright using the blue Kuva, contort and disfigure said bodies they quote-unquote borrowed, and then in the end, a mysterious figure makes it so they are forced to keep those bodies forever as penance. I'll leave it up to you to decide who exactly that mystery figure is, but although I have seen some say it could be the Unum herself before her eventual assimilation into the tower, personally, I would say it's the grandmother. She has intimate knowledge of the story, seems quite pleased when the three Orokin are given their ultimate karma, and, well, being she's the eldest of the group, the timing would appear to be in line of some sort. This is just a theory, though. I don't know if the true identity has ever been made definitively known, and it could all just be a story, much like the legends young children to this day are told regarding the history and nature of Halloween. Now, shedding additional light on how terrible the Orokin were, while satisfying, is not the intention of the video. It actually has me asking a lot of questions about the nature of Kuva itself. As far as we know, there are a few distinct variants, but they all seem to be capable first and foremost of transferring consciousness from one being to another. The Unum's Kuva, allowing her to possess the creatures of the plains of Eidolon to attempt to figure out where the sentient was hiding, the ability of the Orokin to change their literal bodies with actual living beings for their own insane entertainment, and finally and most prominently, the act of continuity, where Kuva was considered the most important and valuable resource the Orokin had. I mean, think about it. What do you think people would pay for a liquid that would essentially allow you to live forever? Wait, it's better than that, isn't it? Think about it this way. Pick any person in the world, any person you would like to be. It could be anyone, too. A high-powered political figure, a superstar athlete, an extremely intelligent or wealthy individual. If you could get to them, the Kuva could allow you to be them for a day, or, if you use the right variant, forever. Heck, people might even begin to sell their own experience, especially if they were someone of prominence. And what would you pay for that? If you were desperate, down on your luck, and maybe even in trouble, what would you do for that? You could kill someone, assume someone else's body, and never ever get caught. If you didn't care for the policies at your own company that you work for, and had really any form of access to the CEO, you could most likely change whatever you wanted. Don't care for how the government is conducting itself? Well, switch with someone and start making change. The obvious ethical aspects of this would most likely be rationalized for a lot of people too. Sure, you're killing somebody, but that person was a bane on society and had it coming, or something to that nature. Another might switch bodies with a wealthy individual and take over their existence, leaving the original owner of said body potentially someone who worked really hard to get where they were, not to mention whose vision keeps this person wealthy, but they didn't deserve to have so much more than anyone else, so this too can be justified. Personally, I believe a great many would use the Kuva specifically for that idea, destroying others and using false justification due to some form of moral superiority, while at the same time themselves being every bit as horrible as who they claim to hate. But that's a discussion for another time altogether. My point is, I feel like this substance is just too much for any society to be able to handle responsibly, and the Naberus story is a pretty good example of that. Really, it's no wonder the Orokin Society was obliterated, and if I'm honest, it's amazing it didn't break down upon itself earlier than it did. Kuva just isn't something anyone should really have access to, but it's here all the same. And if they're anything like this society, well, let's put it this way. The anti-aging industry is set to be almost a $500 billion industry by 2030, so is there a better anti-aging procedure than just taking a younger person's body? I asked earlier in the video how much you'd pay, but I have to tell you that it really doesn't matter what you'd pay, because wealthy people, who tend to be older because they had to accumulate said wealth, are willing to pay, and pay they do. And I think everyone who's reached a certain age in their life can agree, we'd all like to turn back the clock a bit if it were possible. But there's no product that comes anywhere close to Kuva. And my thoughts are, once the dust settles, after the new war, when societies begin to reform in the Warframe universe, and all the fighting is done, are they not doomed to the same fate? I suppose all we can do is hope. Well, that is if we survive the war. Time will tell, I guess. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed the video today, and it got you thinking a bit about how dangerous a substance like Kuva really is among those who don't or can't respect it. Personally, I'm not sure any society could. but that's just my opinion. At any rate, I hope you all have a wonderful day today, a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk at you all in the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.